My name is Claire Whitmore, and I am 34 years old. 3 weeks ago, I sat in the middle of a candlelit ballroom while my parents celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary in front of nearly 200 guests. There were white roses on every table, a string quartet by the windows, gold lettering on the cake that said, Edward and Margaret Whitmore, 40 years of love, loyalty, and family. Everyone applauded when my father stood to give his toast. Everyone smiled when my mother wiped away a perfect little tear. And then, in front of relatives, neighbors, church friends, my colleagues, and my 7-year-old daughter, my mother lifted her champagne glass and said I was proof that some women simply weren't built to be chosen twice. The room went quiet. Then a few people laughed. Not because it was funny. Because people laugh when cruelty is wrapped in silk and served as a joke. My father didn't stop her. My sister looked down at her phone. And my daughter Lily tugged on my sleeve and whispered, Mommy, why does Grandma say nobody chooses you? I did not cry. I sat there with my hands folded in my lap and felt something inside me go perfectly still. But what my parents didn't know, what nobody in that beautiful ballroom expected, was that one man at the back table had been waiting years to tell the truth about the perfect Whitmore marriage. Before I take you back to that night, let me start 6 months earlier, when my mother called and asked me to plan the anniversary dinner. It was a Thursday evening in November. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Manchester, helping Lily glue paper planets onto a shoebox for her school project. My phone rang. Mum. She rarely called unless she needed something, and she always began the same way. Claire, darling, are you busy? That meant yes, I was about to be. I put the glue stick down and answered. Mum? Oh good, you picked up. Your father and I have decided to do something proper for our 40th. A dinner. Not too flashy, but tasteful. Your sister thinks we should hire a planner, but honestly, you've always been good at that sort of thing. That sort of thing. Not my job. Not my life. Not the 12-hour shifts I worked as a district nurse. Just that sort of thing. I should have said no. I should have told her I was tired. That I was raising a child alone. That I was still paying solicitor fees from the divorce. That I had no interest in organizing a celebration for two people who had never once celebrated me. But Lily looked up from her shoebox and smiled. Is that Grandma? And because some foolish part of me still wanted my daughter to have the family I never really had, I said yes. For the next 6 months, I became the unpaid organizer of my parents' perfect anniversary. I booked the ballroom at Hartley Hall, the same hotel where half the town held weddings and charity galas. I chose the flowers because Mum said white roses were classy, not desperate. I chased RSVPs. I organized the seating chart. I arranged the old family photos for the slideshow. I even found a vintage champagne fountain because my father remembered seeing one at a London hotel in 1986 and said it would be a nice touch. Not once did either of them thank me. My younger sister, Amelia, showed up for the fun parts. Dress shopping with Mum. Wine tasting with Dad. A photo shoot for the anniversary invitation, where she stood between them in a cream coat, laughing like the third piece of a perfect family portrait. I wasn't invited to that. When I asked why, Mum said, Oh Claire, don't be sensitive. You hate having your picture taken anyway. That was how she did it. She never screamed. She never slammed doors. She simply removed you from the picture and then called you dramatic for noticing. My parents had 2 daughters. Amelia was the golden one. I was the cautionary tale. Growing up, I was the responsible one. The one who packed Amelia's lunch when Mum had migraines. The one who helped Dad with invoices when his small property business nearly collapsed. The one who earned scholarships, worked weekends, and never caused trouble. Then I married Thomas Reed at 26. For the first 2 years, my parents loved him. He was handsome, charming, worked in finance, wore expensive watches, and called my mother Margaret instead of Mum, which she found sophisticated. When Lily was born, everything changed. Thomas didn't like crying babies. He didn't like hospital bills. He didn't like that I was exhausted and no longer interested in making him feel like the center of the universe. By the time Lily was 3, he was having an affair with a woman from his office named Charlotte. By the time Lily was 4, he had moved into Charlotte's flat. By the time Lily was 5, my mother had rewritten the story for the entire family. Thomas hadn't abandoned us. I had failed to keep my marriage warm. I had let myself go. I had become difficult. My father said nothing. That was his talent. Silence. He could sit in the middle of a burning room and pretend he didn't smell smoke. After the divorce, Mum began introducing me in public as our Claire. She's doing her best on her own, at church, at garden parties, at the butcher's, at Lily's school fair, always with that soft sigh at the end, as if being a single mother was an illness people should whisper about. The worst part was that Lily started noticing. One Saturday afternoon, we visited my parents' house so I could collect old photographs for the anniversary slideshow. Lily walked into the sitting room and stood in front of the mantelpiece. There were framed photos everywhere. Mom and Dad in Italy. Amelia graduating from university. Amelia with her boyfriend, Oliver. Amelia at Christmas. Amelia laughing beside Dad at some charity event. Not one photo of Lily. Not one. "Mummy," Lily asked, "why am I not on Grandma's shelf?" I froze with a photo album in my hands. Mum heard her from the hallway. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, smiling too brightly. "Grandma just hasn't found the right frame yet." Lily nodded because children believe adults when they haven't learned not to. But I saw the question stay in her face. Why am I not there? Why don't I belong? That night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat on the kitchen floor and cried quietly into a tea towel. Not because my mother had hurt me. I was used to that. I cried because I had allowed my daughter to stand in a room and feel erased. And I knew then that something had to change. But I still didn't cancel the anniversary dinner. Hope is a humiliating thing sometimes. It makes you walk into rooms where you already know you are not safe. 2 weeks before the dinner, Amelia came over to my flat carrying 2 takeaway coffees and a garment bag. She never came to my flat. She said the neighborhood made her anxious. She laid the garment bag over my sofa and unzipped it. Inside was a pale gray dress. Long sleeves. High neck. No shape. It looked like something a widow would wear in a period drama. Mom chose it, Amelia said. She thought it would be appropriate. Appropriate for what? Amelia took a sip of coffee. For the family photos. You know, elegant. Understated. I looked at the dress. Then at my sister. What she means is invisible. Amelia rolled her eyes. Claire, please don't start. It's one night. Can't you just make it easy for once? For once. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, is Lily included in the photos? Amelia hesitated. That was answer enough. Mum thinks it might be simpler if Lily stays with a sitter during the formal pictures. You know how children get restless. My daughter is part of this family. She is, Amelia said quickly. Of course she is. But this is Mum and Dad's night. There it was. Their night. Their marriage. Their image. Their story. And Lily and I were only welcome if we stood exactly where they placed us. The evening before the anniversary dinner, I went to Hartley Hall to check the seating cards. That was when I met Daniel Brooks. He was Oliver's older brother, invited because Amelia was practically engaged to Oliver, and Mum had already begun calling his family our future people. Daniel was 38, tall, quiet, with dark blonde hair, and the kind of face that looked tired before it looked handsome. He was arranging place cards near the entrance when I arrived. You must be Claire, he said. I am. And you're Daniel? Guilty. He smiled, but his eyes were kind. Not charming. Kind. There's a difference. We spent 20 minutes correcting the seating chart because Mum had placed Lily at the children's table with toddlers, even though Lily was 7 and didn't know any of them. I moved Lily's card beside mine. Daniel noticed but said nothing. After we finished, I walked down the corridor toward the ladies' room and heard voices around the corner. Amelia. Oliver. Daniel. Amelia sounded irritated. Your brother needs to stop looking at Claire like she's some tragic heroine. Daniel's voice was calm. I'm looking at her like a person being treated badly, Oliver said. Dan, stay out of it. No, Daniel replied. I watched Margaret tell 3 people tonight that Claire's divorce was a shame on the family. That isn't normal, Amelia laughed lightly. You don't know our family. I know enough. Then Amelia said something I will never forget. Claire likes being pitied. It gives her an identity. I stood frozen in the hallway. Daniel answered so quietly I almost didn't hear him. My mother raised 2 boys alone after our father left. If anyone had spoken about her the way your family speaks about Claire, I would have cut them out of my life. There was silence. Then Amelia said, well, this isn't about your mother. Daniel replied, maybe tomorrow it will be. I left before they saw me. I didn't sleep that night. The anniversary dinner was held on a Saturday in May. Hartley Hall looked beautiful. Cream walls, Gold mirrors, chandeliers, white roses, candles floating in glass bowls. The sort of beauty people use to hide rot. I wore the gray dress. Not because Mum chose it. Because I wanted no one to say I ruined the photos. Lily wore a navy blue dress with tiny embroidered stars along the hem. I curled her hair myself and let her choose her silver shoes. When we arrived, Mum looked at Lily first. Not with joy, with assessment. "Oh," she said. "You brought her early. She's my daughter." "Yes, dear. We all know." Then she turned to me and smoothed the shoulder of my dress like I was furniture she had rented. "At least the color works." Dad was by the bar laughing with old business friends. When he saw me, he lifted a hand. Not a hug. Not a kiss on the cheek. A hand. "Claire," he said. "Good of you to come. Good of me to come." To the event I had planned. To the dinner I had arranged. To the celebration I had held together with spreadsheets, phone calls, and money I should have spent on Lily's new school shoes. I looked around the ballroom. Nearly 200 people. My Aunt Caroline. My cousins. My supervisor from the clinic, Mrs. Evans. Lily's head teacher. Neighbors who had known me since I wore pigtails. People who had watched my marriage collapse and pretended not to gossip while knowing every detail. The slideshow began after dinner. Photos of Mum and Dad as teenagers. Their wedding. Their first house. Holidays in Cornwall. Amelia as a baby. Me holding Amelia. Me in school uniform. Me graduating. Then suddenly, the photos skipped 10 years. No wedding photo of me and Thomas. No photo of Lily as a baby. No family Christmas after my divorce. Just Amelia. Amelia at university. Amelia with Oliver. Amelia and Mum laughing in Paris. Lily leaned against my side. "Mummy, where am I?" I swallowed. "Maybe later, love." But there was no later. When the slideshow ended, people applauded. My father stood first. He gave a charming speech about marriage. About loyalty. About choosing the same person every day. About how family survives because good people keep their promises. I watched my mother smile up at him. 40 years of love, loyalty, and family. That was what the cake said. Then Mum took the microphone. She looked perfect. Champagne silk dress. Pearl earrings. Hair pinned into a soft silver twist. She thanked the guests. She thanked Amelia for being a constant joy. She thanked Oliver for joining our family in spirit. Then her eyes found me. "And of course," she said, "our Claire helped with the arrangements. Helped. Not planned. Not organized. Helped." A polite clap moved through the room. I smiled because that was what I had been trained to do. Mum continued. 40 years of marriage teaches you many things. Patience. Sacrifice. Forgiveness. But most of all, it teaches you the importance of choosing wisely. Her voice softened. Dangerously. Edward and I were blessed. We made a good choice in each other. She paused. Not everyone does. The room shifted. I felt it before I understood it. That tiny change in the air when people realize they are about to witness something uncomfortable. Mum smiled. My eldest daughter Claire knows that better than anyone. My hands went cold. She married young. She believed in romance. And bless her heart, she paid for it. A few people gave awkward chuckles. Mum tilted her head. Now, I don't say this to embarrass her. That is always what people say right before they embarrass you. I say it because marriage is sacred. It is not something you try on and return when it no longer fits. My face burned. Lily's hand slid into mine under the table. Mum lifted her glass. So tonight, as Edward and I celebrate 40 years of being chosen and choosing each other, I hope our story reminds the younger generation not to settle, not to rush, and not to become someone else's regret. A few people clapped because they didn't know what else to do. Then she laughed softly. And Claire, darling, don't worry. There's still time. Some men do like a project. That was when the laughter came. Small. Nervous. Polite. Horrible. I stared at the tablecloth. At the knife beside my plate. At the tiny drop of wine near my glass. I could feel every person looking at me. Mrs. Evans from the clinic. Lily's head teacher. My cousins. The women from church. I told myself not to cry. Not here. Not in front of Lily. Then my father leaned toward one of his business friends. He had forgotten the microphone was still close enough to catch the head table. Or maybe he hadn't. He said, with a chuckle, "Margaret's right. Claire always did have a talent for turning gold into second-hand goods. The sentence traveled through the speakers. Clear. Sharp. Unforgivable. The ballroom went silent. Lily turned her face up to me. Her blue eyes were wide. "Mummy," she whispered. "Am I second-hand too?" That was the moment I stopped loving my father in the way daughters are expected to love their fathers. Not because he hurt me, because he let my child wonder if she was worth less because her father left. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Then a chair scraped across the floor. Not mine. At the back of the ballroom, Daniel Brooks stood up. He buttoned his jacket calmly. Not angry. Not dramatic. Calm. That was somehow more frightening. Oliver reached for his sleeve, but Daniel stepped away. He walked down the center of the room, past the white roses, past the champagne fountain, past 200 people who suddenly found their plates fascinating. Mum still held the microphone. Daniel stopped in front of her. He extended his hand. "May I?" Mum blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "The microphone." "This is a family event." Daniel looked around the ballroom. "Yes," he said. "That seems to be the problem." A sound moved through the room. Not laughter. Shock. Mum's face tightened. But she handed him the microphone because people like my mother care too much about appearing graceful to refuse gracefully in public. Daniel turned to the guests. "My name is Daniel Brooks. Most of you don't know me. I'm Oliver's brother." He paused. "My mother's name was Helen Brooks." His voice changed when he said her name. Softened. "My father left when I was 8. My brother was 5. My mother worked in a chemist during the day and cleaned offices at night. She missed meals so we wouldn't. She repaired our school uniforms by hand. She learned how to fix a boiler because we couldn't afford a plumber. She raised 2 boys with no applause, no anniversary dinner, and no one calling her loyal for surviving what a man walked away from. Nobody moved." Daniel looked at my mother. "So when I hear a woman mocked because her husband left, I don't hear a joke. I hear ignorance dressed up as tradition." Mum's lips parted. Daniel turned to my father. "And when I hear a father call his own daughter second-hand goods in front of her child, I don't hear humor. I hear a man who has mistaken cowardice for dignity." Dad's face went gray. Daniel looked back at the room. "Claire Whitmore is not a failed woman. She is a working mother. She is raising a little girl. She planned this entire evening while the people being celebrated used her as a warning label." A few people turned toward me. I couldn't breathe. Then Daniel said the line that split the night open. "And if this room is going to celebrate 40 years of loyalty, perhaps it should first ask whether the marriage being celebrated was ever as loyal as the cake suggests." Mum went completely still. Aunt Caroline set her wineglass down. My father looked at Daniel with something close to panic. Daniel lowered the microphone. "I'll stop there unless someone wants to keep pretending." For 3 seconds, nobody spoke. Then Aunt Caroline stood. My mother's older sister, 70 years old. Silver hair. Straight back. A woman who had spent most of my life smoking cigarettes in the garden and saying very little. "Maggie," she said. My mother flinched at the childhood nickname. "Don't." Aunt Caroline ignored her. "No. I've stayed quiet long enough." She turned to the room. Edward left Margaret twice. Once in 1998, and once in 2006. Both times, Claire was the one keeping this family running while her mother cried upstairs and her father decided whether he wanted to come home. The ballroom made a sound. Not a gasp exactly. More like the room inhaled. Aunt Caroline pointed at the anniversary banner. 40 years of loyalty? Please. Claire was 14 the first time she had to cook Amelia dinner because Margaret couldn't get out of bed. Claire was 22 the second time she paid the mortgage from her university savings because Edward had emptied the business account chasing a woman in Bristol. My father stood. "Caroline, that is enough." "No, Edward. Enough was when you let your daughter be mocked for a divorce you taught her to hide from. Enough was when Margaret blamed Claire for being abandoned while building her entire life on pretending you never abandoned her first." Mum's hands shook. Amelia was crying now, but I couldn't tell if it was guilt or embarrassment. Aunt Caroline looked at me. "I'm sorry, Claire. I should have said it years ago." The microphone hung in Daniel's hand. The cake still gleamed under the chandelier. 40 years of love, loyalty, and family. The words looked ridiculous now, like a costume left on the floor after a play. I stood. My chair made a soft sound against the carpet. Lily clung to my hand. I didn't go to the microphone. I didn't need it. I'm taking my daughter home, I said. My voice was quiet, but the room heard me. Mom, Dad, you don't get to use me as proof of failure while hiding your own. You don't get to shame me for surviving the same kind of betrayal you spent decades covering up. Mom's eyes filled. Not with remorse, with fear. Fear of being seen. I looked at my father. And Dad, Lily heard you. He looked down. Of course he did. That is what I will remember. Not the speech. Not the laughter. That my child asked if she was secondhand because her grandfather thought cruelty was funny. Lily pressed her face into my side. I put my hand on her head. We won't be attending family dinners. We won't be answering calls. If you want a relationship with us, you can start by writing down exactly what you did tonight and why it was wrong. Mom whispered. Claire, don't be dramatic. I almost smiled. There it was. The family prayer. Don't be dramatic. I said, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being done. Then I walked out with my daughter. Daniel stepped aside to let us pass. As I reached the doorway, Lily turned around and looked at the room. Not at my parents. At the cake? Mummy, she whispered, can we get chips? And for some reason, that nearly broke me. Not the speech. Not the humiliation. Chips. The ordinary hunger of a child who had just watched adults destroy something and still trusted me to take care of dinner. Yes, love, I said. We can get chips. We drove through the dark to a takeaway near my flat. Lily ate in the back seat, still wearing her navy dress and silver shoes. When we got home, I helped her wash her face, changed her into pajamas, and tucked her into bed. She looked up at me. Are we bad, Mummy? I sat beside her. No. Is Daddy leaving my fault? No, sweetheart. Is Grandpa angry because we're not a proper family? I took her small hand. Listen to me carefully. A proper family is not made by a man staying in a house. A proper family is made by love, safety, and people who tell the truth. You and I are a proper family. She thought about that. Then she nodded. Can Aunt Caroline be family too? I smiled. Yes. Aunt Caroline can be family too. Lily fell asleep within minutes. I sat on the floor beside her bed for a long time. My phone buzzed in the kitchen. 12 missed calls from Mum. 5 from Amelia. 2 from Dad. 1 message from Daniel. It said, I'm sorry tonight happened. I'm not sorry I spoke. I didn't reply that night. I turned off my phone, made tea I didn't drink, and sat by the window until the sky began to lighten. The next morning, I wrote an email. Not a text. Not something Mum could twist. An email. Clear. Documented. Final. To Mum, Dad, and Amelia. Last night, you humiliated me in front of my daughter and nearly 200 people. You mocked my divorce, reduced my worth as a woman, and made Lily question whether she was less valuable because her father is not in our home. Until each of you can acknowledge what happened without excuses, Lily and I will not be attending family events, accepting visits, or taking phone calls. Love does not require me to be available for humiliation. Claire. I read it twice. Then I sent it. For the first time in years, I felt afraid and peaceful at the same time. That week, the town talked. Of course it did. People always talk. But this time, they weren't only talking about me. They were talking about the perfect Whitmore marriage. They were talking about Edward leaving twice. They were talking about Margaret building a reputation on family values while using her eldest daughter as a shield. Mum stepped down from the church flower committee for personal reasons. Dad stopped going to the golf club for a month. Amelia sent one message. You ruined Mum and Dad's anniversary, I replied with one sentence. No. They ruined it when they chose cruelty and called it a toast. She didn't answer. Aunt Caroline came over the following Saturday with shepherd's pie and a bag of books for Lily. She stood awkwardly in my kitchen, holding the dish like an apology. I failed you, she said. I shook my head. You spoke when it mattered. I should have spoken when you were 14. Maybe she should have. But I had learned something. Sometimes people arrive late and still arrive. I let her in. 2 months passed. Quietly at first. Then, steadily. Lily stopped asking why Grandma didn't call. She started asking when Aunt Caroline was coming round. At work, Mrs. Evans called me into her office and offered me a senior nursing role I had been too insecure to apply for. You're good under pressure, she said. I laughed. You have no idea, she smiled gently. I think I have some idea. Daniel and I had coffee once. Only once. He apologized again, not for speaking, but for not speaking sooner. I told him he had nothing to apologize for. He told me Amelia and Oliver were taking space. I said, I was sorry. He said, don't be. Some families need distance before they can tell the truth. I thought about that for a long time. 3 weeks ago, I believed boundaries meant losing family. Now I understand boundaries don't destroy love. They reveal where love was missing. My mother has not apologized. My father sent one letter. It was short, messy, not enough, but real. He wrote, I laughed because I was afraid of your mother turning on me. That is not an excuse. It is the truth, and it is ugly. I am ashamed. I have not forgiven him. Not yet. But I kept the letter. Not because he deserves a place in my life automatically. Because Lily deserves to see that apologies are not words people throw at you when consequences arrive. Real apologies come with shame, with patience, with changed behavior, and time. Last Saturday, Lily and I went to the park. It was late afternoon, the grass still damp from rain. The sky, the soft gray-blue color Manchester does better than anywhere. Lily climbed onto the swing and asked me to push her higher. As I pushed, she shouted, Mummy, we're a proper family. I laughed so hard I nearly cried. Yes, I called back. We are. She leaned back, hair flying, silver shoes flashing in the sun. For years, I thought being chosen by the wrong people meant I had failed. Now I know the truth. I was not unwanted. I was simply unavailable for the kind of love that only works when I stay small. My daughter will not grow up watching me shrink. She will not learn that a woman's worth depends on whether a man stays. She will not sit at a table and mistake humiliation for family. That night at Hartley Hall, my parents wanted to celebrate 40 years of loyalty. Instead, they exposed 40 years of silence. And I finally walked out of it. So if you have ever been the person your family used as a warning story, hear me clearly. You are not the mistake. You are not the failure. You are not secondhand, damaged, difficult, dramatic, or too much. Sometimes you are simply the first person brave enough to stop clapping for a lie. And if you were sitting in that ballroom, listening to a mother humiliate her daughter in front of a child, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have stood up? Be honest. Because sometimes the truth begins with one person pushing back their chair.